Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are completely unpacking the geopolitical chess game behind global occupations. And we're drawing directly from a really fascinating source called Principles of Power. We're going to use this time to look past the daily headlines and uncover exactly why powerful nations make the choices they do. And, maybe more importantly, we'll examine the actual pathways to peace that are outlined in our source material. Okay, let's dive right into this. What if powerful nations could stop an occupation but just chose not to? I mean, think about it. This is the core paradox we are looking at today. Why do countries that so loudly champion democracy, freedom, and human rights sometimes choose to remain completely silent when it comes to global occupations? Or worse still, why do they sometimes actively support them? Is it all about security? Is it money? Political leverage? Well, as you'll see, the answers are layered, highly complex, and deeply rooted in how global power actually operates in the real world. So here's a quick roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. The geopolitical paradox, 2. Cold calculations, 3. Influence and double standards, 4. The human cost, and finally, 5. Pathways to peace. All right, section 1, the geopolitical paradox, rhetoric versus reality. So, right off the bat, there's this massive, inherent tension between the high-minded, democratic language powerful nations use on the world stage and the highly pragmatic, sometimes ruthless actions those exact same nations take behind closed doors. But before we can truly grasp the geopolitical stakes here, we have to look at the source's definition of occupation, because occupation isn't just about soldiers and borders, it is an all-encompassing system. We're talking about a reality that dictates access to homes, schools, hospitals, water, and jobs. It fundamentally shapes the identity and the future of entire generations. And here's the kicker. While occupied people are struggling for basic human dignity, powerful countries are often the ones providing the military, diplomatic, or economic support that keeps those exact systems in place. Moving on to Section 2, Cold Calculations, Power and Money. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the incentives actually stack up when governments weigh pragmatic, cold calculations over moral considerations. Basically, 3 pillars emerge: strategic, economic, and political. Strategically, nations want military bases, secure trade routes, and regional influence, right? Economically, and this is a big one, wars and occupations generate massive industries. Think defense contracts, huge weapons sales, and energy infrastructure. And politically, international relations basically run on alliances. Countries protect their friends, they vote together in international organizations, and they offer diplomatic shields. Put all that together, and you have incredibly strong incentives for powerful nations to maintain the status quo, even if international law is literally being violated. Of course, security is the most common justification we hear, but there are 2 very distinct competing narratives here. On one side, governments argue that military control prevents terrorism and ensures regional stability. They believe occupation provides necessary protection. But on the flip side, critics argue the exact opposite. They argue that prolonged occupation inevitably creates deep resentment, fuels endless cycles of violence, and makes lasting peace fundamentally harder to achieve. And our source material is super clear on this. Security and human rights absolutely must be balanced. They should never be treated as opposing goals. Which brings us to Section 3, Influence and Double Standards. So, foreign policy isn't just about what happens overseas. It's heavily shaped right at home by domestic election outcomes and lobby groups. But beyond that domestic pressure, there's this constant looming fear of losing global influence. If one powerful country decides to withdraw its support for an occupation, they almost always fear a rival global power will immediately step into that political vacuum. Because of this, occupations become tied to these massive geopolitical chess matches. And the tragic result, everyday civilians are left completely trapped in the middle of these struggles for global influence. And this leads us to the double standard. Consider 2 different scenarios. In scenario A, certain occupations receive strict, immediate sanctions, and they totally dominate the global news cycles. Yet in scenario B, other occupations receive immense financial aid and military support with very limited critical media attention. Critics point out that this blatant inconsistency, where powerful countries respond entirely differently depending on who their allies are, fatally weakens global trust in the entire international system. I mean, it really makes you question the rules of the game. Okay, let's completely shift gears and slow down for Section 4, the real human cost. Stepping away from the macro-level political chess game for a moment, the micro-level, physical reality for civilians often means highly restricted movement. Just imagine children growing up where their simple daily commute to school is interrupted by checkpoints, concrete barriers, and armed soldiers. It also means severe economic hardship. Communities face this continuous, looming risk of displacement. Their local businesses are stifled, and their actual economic potential is actively suffocated by systemic restrictions. And it means families separated. Let that point linger for just a moment. This is the severe emotional toll of having your community ties, your familial bonds, and your historical roots entirely severed by political borders drawn by occupying forces. Ultimately, it results in fear becoming just another part of everyday life. This compounding human toll proves an absolutely essential point from our source. Occupation is never merely a geopolitical issue. It is, first and foremost, a profound humanitarian one. All right, let's look forward now. Section 5. Pathways Towards Sustainable Peace. So, how do we actually build a framework for real change? Our source outlines 4 foundational steps. Let's move to and see how this builds. Step 1. Equal application of law. That means no exceptions based on political influence. Every single nation must be held to the same standard. Step 2. Genuine negotiations. This means dialogue that actually includes all affected communities, not just military dominance. Step 3. Responsible diplomacy, where powerful nations actually use their immense leverage to protect civilians and reduce violence rather than prolonging it. And finally, Step 4. Independent accountability. We need impartial investigations into violations to reduce impunity across the board. Now, to sustain those steps, 3 broader principles are required. First, absolute humanitarian protection. Basic human rights, like food, healthcare, and water, must never, ever be used as political bargaining chips. Second, we desperately need stronger international institutions that enforce rules consistently, regardless of the country involved. And third, and hey, this is where you come in, informed citizens. The source highlights that driving fact-based discussions, avoiding misinformation, and really raising public awareness is exactly what shifts those big, long-term political decisions. Ultimately, it all boils down to this one crucial realization from the text. Peace built only on power rarely lasts. History has proven this to us time and time again. True, lasting peace requires justice. Justice requires accountability, and accountability demands equal respect for international law and human dignity for absolutely everyone. So, we're going to leave you with this provocative final question to chew on. Can global powers balance national interests with universal human rights, or will politics always come first? It's an incredibly complex reality, but understanding the mechanisms behind it is the very first step toward making a change. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep questioning the narratives, keep seeking fact-based truths,